The sun had barely begun to illuminate the dense forest of Aspen Hill, painting the tall trunks with golden strokes. The air carried a fresh scent of damp earth and pine, mixed with the gentle murmur of a stream winding among the moss-covered stones. In the heart of this wild territory, Davy adjusted his worn leather jacket as he walked toward the lake near his cabin. The morning brought a familiar peace, that rare feeling of belonging known only to those who lived with nature. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a moment. That refuge had become home many years ago, ever since he decided to leave behind the noisy city and find purpose among the trees. There, the rules were clear. Survival depended on understanding the forest, on respecting the balance that governed every living being. But that morning, something shattered that balance. A sharp sound, unlike any other, echoed among the trees. Davy stopped immediately, his senses heightened. A drawn-out, hoarse cry filled with pain. It was neither a common howl nor a hunting call. Instincts took over. He deviated from the path, moving carefully among brittle branches and wet leaves. The sound grew louder as he approached. The smell of metal filled the air. Iron and blood mixed in an aroma he knew all too well. And then, in the middle of a clearing hidden by the morning mist, Davy saw her. Among trampled bushes and grass stained with red, a silver-furred she-wolf lay sprawled on the ground. Her flank heaved irregularly, and her amber eyes reflected a mix of fear and exhaustion. The true horror was in her hind legs. The cruel steel of a hunter's trap was embedded in her flesh, tightening brutally. With every slight movement, the beast emitted a guttural growl, not as a threat, but in pure agony. Anger rose in Davy's chest. Hunters! He despised those who invaded the forest, leaving behind nothing but destruction. No creature deserved such a fate. The she-wolf's eyes met his, and for 1 second, just 1 second, there was neither man nor beast. Only two living beings, separated by an abyss of distrust and pain. Davy knew he had to act quickly. Yet one wrong move, and the creature might attack him purely on instinct. He slowly raised his hands, as if calming a wild horse. "Hey girl, I know it hurts. I won't hurt you." The she-wolf growled, her eyes half closed. Blood dripped down her silver fur, staining the earth. Davy inched closer, assessing the situation. The trap was rusty, a model so old that it used a pressure latch difficult to open without tools. He carried nothing that could force it open there. He would have to free her another way. But then, he noticed another detail. The she-wolf wasn't just injured. She was a mother. Marks on her belly revealed that she had recently given birth. And if her pups were still alive, they would be alone and defenseless. The forest seemed to close in around him, and a decision had to be made. Taking a deep breath, Davy slid the backpack off his shoulders and retrieved a thick cloth. If he could cover the she-wolf's eyes, it would prevent her from reacting purely on instinct when he touched the trap. "Come on, girl. Hold on." He advanced. The growl came first, a low warning sound. The muscles in the she-wolf's neck tensed, her fur along the nape rising. But she no longer had the strength to fight. Davy tossed the cloth over her muzzle and pressed it against her eyes, blocking her vision. With his other hand, he groped for the trap's latch and attempted to open it. The mechanism creaked, refusing to give in. The she-wolf shuddered under his hands. Her breathing grew fainter. He didn't have time. He grabbed a heavy branch and used it to press the lever. The trap finally yielded with a metallic click. The steel jaws opened, releasing her bloodied paw. The she-wolf let out a hoarse whimper and collapsed, her head resting on the ground. Davy removed the cloth and watched as her amber eyes met his once more. There was no more fear, only deep exhaustion. He knew the she-wolf wouldn't survive without help. The pups needed her. Glancing toward the dark forest around him, Davy took a deep breath and made his choice. Supporting the fragile body of the she-wolf with his arms, he lifted her as carefully as he could. The weight was not the issue, but time was. Every second counted. With determined steps, he headed back to the cabin. The struggle was far from over, but he would never let that mother die. The wooden door creaked as it opened, and Davy entered in haste, feeling the weight of the weakened she-wolf in his arms. The warmth inside contrasted with the forest's damp chill, and the crackle of the fireplace broke the oppressive silence of the cabin. He knelt beside a deerskin rug and laid the she-wolf down gently. Her trembling body panted in uneven intervals, while the blood-soaked cloth around her paw stained the hurriedly tied fabric. Time was short. Dobby slid his backpack aside and grabbed a sharp blade along with a bottle of alcohol, his eyes examining every wound. The metal of the trap had left deep cuts, exposing raw flesh, while the swelling around it indicated that infection was beginning to set in. The she-wolf watched his every move, her amber eyes half closed, exhausted. The fear was still there, but something in her was beginning to change. "This will hurt, girl, but you need to hold on." He poured the liquid over her wound. Instantly, the she-wolf's body tensed, a guttural growl reverberating from her chest. Claws scraped against the rug, but she made no move to bite. The first sign of trust. Dobby worked quickly. He cut pieces from the cotton bandages stored in his supplies box and pressed them against the injured flesh, binding it firmly. The scent of herbs mixed with the smoke from the fireplace filled the air, creating a contrast between healing and pain. When he finished, he let out a heavy sigh. The worst had passed, for now, at least. But the she-wolf wasn't the only one who needed him. The pups. They were out there, alone, waiting for the mother who wouldn't return if he didn't do something. Dobby stood, his decision already made. He grabbed a thicker coat, secured his knife at his belt, and checked his flashlight before pushing open the door and plunging back into the forest darkness. The night breeze whispered among the trees, carrying the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of the stream. The moon, hidden by heavy clouds, offered little light, making the forest even more treacherous. Dobby moved quickly, guided by the memory of where he had found the she-wolf. His instinct told him that the pups couldn't be far away. The problem was another. Without the mother, predators could easily track their scent. Foxes, lynxes, and worse yet, wolves from another pack. An abandoned pup was an easy target. Dobby quickened his pace. When he reached the clearing where he had found the she-wolf, he knelt and surveyed the surroundings. The ground held small footprints, some overlapping, indicating that the pups had wandered around the area. His eyes scanned the area, searching for something more. That's when he heard it. Low, almost imperceptible. A faint whimper coming from inside the hollow trunk of a fallen tree. Dobby approached, holding his breath. His flashlight illuminated the narrow opening, revealing wide eyes reflecting a yellow light. Small tufts of gray and black fur were huddled inside, their bodies trembling both from the cold and from fear. 4. Dobby's heart tightened. They were so small. Rounded ears, short legs, tousled fur. They needed their mother, and fast. Lowering himself, he slowly extended his hands. "Come on, little ones. It's all right." The pups shrank back further, their eyes alert at every move he made. No reaction. He needed to be smarter. Stepping away a little, Dobby searched his pockets until he found a piece of dried meat. The scent quickly filled the space. Tiny noses twitched, and one of the pups, bolder than the rest, crawled hesitantly to the tree trunk's opening. Hunger overcame their fear. As soon as the first one came close enough, Dobby carefully picked it up, feeling its warm, fragile body in his hands. "Got you, little one? Now the others." The siblings did not take long to follow, and one by one, he gathered them with equal gentleness. He wrapped all 4 in the blanket he carried in his backpack and held them close to his body, protecting them from the biting cold. The first part of the mission was complete, but there was more. Before leaving, Dobby cast one last glance around. Something was wrong. The forest was too silent. Silently in a way that felt dangerous. A shiver ran up his neck, and he knew they were not alone. The rustle of leaves to his left came first, then another to his right. Small, cautious, furtive sounds. Predatory movements. Dobby swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the knife at his belt. The forest, which moments ago had seemed like nothing more than a wild home, now turned into an invisible battleground. He needed to get out. Fast. The last few meters to the cabin were covered in hurried steps. Davy pushed the door forcefully, locking it as soon as he entered. His heart pounded against his chest, his body tense, his senses still alert. He waited a few seconds. No sound came from outside. Exhaling slowly, he turned to the pups. They still trembled, frightened and confused, but they were safe. When he placed them on the floor near the fireplace, the little ones glanced at each other for a few hesitant seconds. Then they began sniffing the area, searching for something or someone. The she-wolf. Davy knelt beside her. Her amber eyes slowly opened, and she let out a low whimper as she shifted. The pups reacted in unison. One of them ran to her, its tail wagging, touching its muzzle against the mother's with its own. The second followed shortly after, then the others. The little hearts knew. She was home. The she-wolf looked at them, dazed, as if she couldn't believe they were there. But then, something changed. Instinct took over. She lifted her head, licking her pups tenderly, drawing them close, offering the warmth of her own body. Davy observed the scene, feeling something grow within his chest. Mission accomplished, but the relief wouldn't last long. The forest had grown too silent that night, and he knew something was waiting. The silence of the forest never meant safety. Davy knew this well. Sitting by the fireplace, his eyes fixed on the wood crackling in the flames, he listened to the sounds around him, feeling the weight of the night spread like a cloak over the cabin. The she-wolf lay near the wall, her exhausted body settled on old blankets. The pups were piled on top of her, small gray shadows moving slowly as they slept. For the first time since the rescue, they seemed peaceful. But Davy was not. The memory of the silent forest wouldn't leave his mind. The way the night swallowed all natural sounds, the feeling that something was there. Watching, waiting. He rested his elbows on his knees, running his hands over his face. Was he overreacting? Perhaps fatigue was playing tricks on his mind. Or perhaps not. He slowly got up and walked to the window. The glass reflected the warm light of the fireplace, but beyond it, there was only darkness. An expansive, impenetrable forest, where eyes could hide among the shadows unnoticed. Davy grabbed the rifle hanging on the wall. He didn't like to use it. His connection with nature had always been based on respect for balance, not on violence. But respect and survival were different matters. The wind blew against the cabin, making the wood creak softly. If something was out there, he needed to be ready. The early hours of the morning crept by slowly. Davy had seated himself near the door, the rifle resting on his leg, his senses alert to any strange sound. But for hours, only the rustling of leaves and the distant murmur of the river filled the space. The pups stirred occasionally, letting out small noises as they slept. The she-wolf, though weak, kept her gaze partially open, as if watching the world even in rest. Then it happened. The sound was low, almost imperceptible. Outside, among the trees, something moved. Davy immediately stood, his muscles tensing. The rifle was raised in an automatic motion, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the window. No sound now, only the silence of the forest. He did not move. He waited. The wind blew again, but this time it carried a new scent. Iron. Blood. Davy's heart raced. Wolves? Could it be a strange pack roaming the territory? Or returning hunters? The possibility made his blood run cold. If hunters were nearby, they might have followed the tracks to this place. The pups let out small whimpers, as if sensing the tension in the air. The she-wolf lifted her head, her ears twitching slightly. She felt something. Davy took his flashlight and unlocked the door, pushing it open slowly. The cold of the early morning embraced him as soon as he stepped onto the porch, his eyes adjusting to the dense darkness. He scanned the forest, the flashlight illuminating only scattered patches between tall trunks. The rifle remained secure in his hands, ready for any need. His instinct screamed not to stray too far from the cabin. But then he saw it. Marks on the ground. Large, deep footprints freshly formed in the moist soil. Something big had passed by here. Davy knelt, running his fingers over the imprint. These were not ordinary wolf tracks. They were larger, heavier. Could they be from a bear? But the forest didn't usually have bears at this time of year. The cold blew stronger. And then the sound came. Low, guttural, a growl echoing among the trees. Davi turned the flashlight in the direction of the noise, his eyes widening as he saw two bright spheres reflecting the light amid the darkness. He froze. The rifle was raised in an instant, but before he could react, the figure moved. The silhouette disappeared among the trees, too fast to follow. Only the wind remained behind. Davi stayed there for several long seconds, his heart pounding in his chest. Whatever it wasn't an ordinary wolf. He had no doubt. Something was hunting in that forest. And now, he knew where to find it. The cabin door was locked firmly. Davi moved away slowly, the rifle still in hand, his eyes fixed on the window. Outside, the forest seemed alive, pulsing with a secret he still couldn't comprehend. The she-wolf watched him, as if she understood what had transpired. The pups were quiet, their small bodies huddled together for warmth. Davi knew it wouldn't end there. Something was circling the cabin, something that shouldn't be there. The only question was it hunting them? Or him? The night dragged on like a hidden predator. Davi remained by the window, his eyes fixed on the oppressive darkness beyond the cabin. The rifle rested on his knees, the sharp blade strapped to his belt, his senses on high alert, waiting. The forest breathed. The she-wolf lay beside the fireplace, her bandaged palm moving slightly as she slept. The pups, piled on top of their mother, stirred restlessly, their small bodies shifting as if they sensed the tension in the air. Outside, something waited. Davi knew it wasn't just paranoia. There were footprints, there was the scent of blood, there were eyes reflecting light in the midst of the forest. And then the sound returned. Low, distant, but not distant enough. The same guttural growl he had heard before resounded through the night, echoing among the tall trunks. This time it was closer. Davi clenched his fingers around the rifle. Whatever was out there, he wasn't going to back down. The fire in the fireplace cast long shadows against the cabin walls. The wind howled outside, making the structure creak as if protesting against the presence of that unseen visitor. Davi knew he had two options. Wait, or go after it first. Waiting meant giving the predator more time to get closer. It meant surrendering the advantage. He wouldn't make that mistake. If something was hunting, he would hunt it back. The door opened silently. Davi slipped out of the cabin, his feet treading precisely on the soft ground. The rifle remained secure in his hands, the flashlight strapped to his belt to avoid any unnecessary glare. The air carried a different weight, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. He advanced slowly, his eyes alert. The trail was still fresh. Large footprints sank into the earth, following an irregular pattern. They weren't the steps of a single predator. There was more than one. A thought tightened something within him, but he continued. Fear had no place there. The forest closed around him, shadows extending like invisible arms. The scent of blood lingered in the air, dense, metallic. And then movement. To the left. Davi turned instantly, raising the rifle. Nothing. Only trees. But something was there. The oppressive silence confirmed it. Instinct screamed before any sound arrived. Something darted out from the darkness. A quick, brutal shadow. Davi barely had time to react before claws tore through his leather jacket, ripping the sleeve. He rolled onto the ground, raising the rifle and firing on reflex. The blast shattered the night. The shadow recoiled. For a fraction of a second, he managed to see it. It wasn't an ordinary wolf. It was bigger, much bigger. Its dark, disheveled fur blended with the forest shadows, but its eyes glowed with a pale yellow hue, more human than they should be. Davi took a deep breath, his blood pounding in his ears. What the hell are you? The creature growled, muscles coiled like a spring ready to snap. But before it could lunge again, another presence emerged from the forest. Another pair of eyes. This time, Amber, the she-wolf. She moved slowly, her body still weak, but her stance made it clear she wouldn't flee. The pups were not there. That meant she had left them safe. Davi realized in that instant. It wasn't just him defending her. She was defending him. The creature growled, but this time, It did not attack. Its eyes alternated between Davi and the she-wolf, as if assessing the situation. Then, with an agile movement, it vanished among the trees. Silence once more. Davi stayed there for what felt like far too many long seconds, the rifle still raised. His chest heaved with heavy breaths. He didn't understand what he had seen, but he knew it wasn't a simple wolf. There was something more in that forest. The cabin had never felt so safe before. Davi locked the door behind him and set down the rifle, his eyes still fixed on the wooden floor. The marks left by the struggle on his jacket were visible, claws sharp enough to tear leather. The she-wolf lay down beside the fireplace, her amber eyes still alert. But something new was in her. That night had changed something between them. He had saved her life, and now she had saved his. The pup slept peacefully, unaware of what had happened. But Davi knew the forest would never be the same for him again. Whatever was out there hadn't truly gone away. He didn't know if he would return, but if he did, he would be ready. The silver she-wolf wasn't just a creature of the forest. She embodied instinct, strength, and the invisible bond between man and nature. When darkness fell, she didn't hesitate to face the unknown, proving that true loyalty doesn't require words. It only requires courage. Because Davi chose to believe in her, he discovered that some connections go beyond logic, beyond fear, beyond what the eyes can see. He saved her life. She saved his. And that night, amid shadows and snow, a pact was sealed. Feel free to share, like, and subscribe to help spread this message. Together, we can inspire more people to respect wildlife, to protect those who protect us, and to recognize that sometimes the true meaning of family emerges in the most unexpected places.